Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a truly fascinating challenge lined up for us. We're going to objectively deconstruct a highly dense, practically esoteric text called The Behaviorist Sin and the Digital Panopticon. This source material is, well, it's a wild, complex blend of psychology, surveillance theory, and spirituality, all mashed together into a completely unique worldview. Our goal today is to take this really fragmented manifesto and lay it out logically for you, step by step, so we can figure out exactly how this author views the modern world.
Right off the bat, the author hits us with this: trust in games is sin of slavery. This immediately sets the stakes, right? We're not just dealing with abstract theories here. The text operates on this radical premise that our everyday interactions are inherently manipulative. They are literally games, and trusting in them doesn't just make you gullible, it makes you a slave. It completely equates modern social structures with absolute spiritual ruin.
Okay, so here's our agenda. 1. The trap of observation. 2. Behaviorism and digital control. 3. Electromagnetic emotional manipulation. 4. Art, persecution, and victims. And 5. The power of the curse. Let's jump right into section 1. The trap of observation, redefining communication.
So the author completely redefines the whole idea of communication. Normally, you and I think of it as just sharing ideas, right? But here, true communication is defined exclusively as a trustful exchange. Think about it. How differently do you act when you know a camera is recording you, or if you suspect someone is listening in on your private phone call? For this author, the very second an outside observer is present, trust is completely shattered, and communication instantly morphs into a tool of manipulation. Basically, any form of external observation strips away your autonomy.
Now, what's really interesting is how the text outlines the collateral damage of this observation, almost like a weird math problem. Person A curses person B. Okay. But if person C is observing and intercepts that message, person C is actually the one who gets hurt. The author frames this not just as, a social faux pas, but as a literal violation of God's commandments that results in sin. Observation itself becomes this massive spiritual hazard, creating unintended victims out of innocent bystanders just because they got caught in the loop.
Moving right along to section 2, Behaviorism and Digital Control, Overriding Consciousness. The source lays out this very deliberate step-by-step mechanism of control. First, a higher intelligent being, like some systemic authority, projects images to force a victim into a pre-written script. Next, they use a method of rewards and suffering. It's actually a lot like how a slot machine or your endless social media feed keeps you hooked, right? Giving you these intermittent hits of dopamine mixed with frustration. And the ultimate goal of all this? Step 3. Completely overriding the victim's autonomous consciousness, effectively turning them into a predictable pawn.
And the text boils this entire manipulative loop down to one really aggressive command: give reward and make the gameplay. This perfectly highlights how the author views behavioral conditioning. To them, these aren't scientific experiments. They are highly exploitative games. The rewards and the suffering are literally just levers being pulled to force a specific, predictable response from the victim. It's forcing them to keep playing a game they absolutely never signed up for.
Which brings us to section 3, electromagnetic emotional manipulation, the mechanics of persecution.
Okay, so this is where the claims get incredibly specific and, frankly, pretty extreme regarding how this control physically works. They argue that women's emotions are transmitted via electromagnetic waves to actually alter another subject's feelings. They also claim that so-called satanic victims make transactions with sinful intentions just to play the role of a rescuer. And it goes further, stating that digital informational control on social media isn't just random algorithms, it's actively funded by government agents to persecute specific individuals. Now, treating these fragmented points neutrally, they really serve as artifacts of the author's deeply held, intense belief about how digital control is physically weaponized against us.
This comparison right here brilliantly illustrates the disconnect at the heart of the author's paranoia. What a normal observer or a behaviorist might look at and see as a simple obsession or a love affair, the author absolutely insists is a highly orchestrated, government-funded, systematic investigation. The text even notes that behaviorists took multiple samples to prove obsession, but failed, which the author takes as ultimate, undeniable proof that it was a targeted investigation all along. It's a total paradigm shift.
Let's shift gears to section 4, art, persecution, and victims, the conditioned artist effect.
So where do creators fit into all this? Well, the author claims that artists are entirely stripped of their agency. The very act of copywriting or destroying art is viewed as a hostile act of judgment. The system supposedly uses forced ownership merely to exploit and siphon money from the creator's raw expression. On top of that, these controllers create fake victims by projecting their own sins onto totally innocent people. Ultimately, the artist gets trapped in these infinite games of psychology that mirror and reinforce their actions, trapping them in a pre-written method actor's script where their free will is just totally erased. But then, amidst all these incredibly complex, dense theories of control, we hit this incredibly vulnerable quote in the source material. The attitude of respect is an illusion born from my own consciousness as being a lonely traveler needing relationship. We really need to pause on this one. Underneath all the dense paranoia about electromagnetic waves and government agents, there is this profound, palpable sense of isolation. The author is analyzing their own fundamental human need for connection, only to tragically conclude that even feelings of respect are nothing more than illusions born out of inescapable loneliness. It's pretty heartbreaking, honestly. And finally, we arrive at Section 5, the power of the curse, spiritual retribution. Here, the author radically redefines intelligence. They state point blank that fearing the injuries of sinful persecution, essentially the fear of death, is not intelligence at all. True intelligence, in their view, is defined solely as projecting the sins of the authority back onto the authority itself, so that God can deliver justice by completely destroying their body, mind, and soul. It is this radical, intensely spiritual rejection of victimhood through total divine retribution.
Now, earlier in the text, there was actually a warning not to curse. But here is the ultimate revelation. You shouldn't curse the images being projected at you, because those images aren't the real cause of your suffering. Instead, because your soul and body are being forced into this infinite psychological mirroring by the observers, the only truly intelligent action is to curse the observers themselves with sin and death. And the author leaves us with this final, defiant declaration. Curse works.
Wow. Okay, we have unpacked a highly complex, deeply paranoid framework today. But as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to consider something. Yes, the source material is undoubtedly extreme, but it kind of acts as a distorted mirror reflecting very real modern anxieties. In our current age of constant algorithmic control and digital tracking, how does this pervasive, creeping fear of always being observed breed entirely new, radical forms of existential and spiritual dread? It's a really heavy question, and definitely one more thinking about the next time you feel the eyes of the digital Panopticon on you. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me today.